We saw something on January 6th we'd never seen before, even during the Civil War. Insurrectionists waving Confederate flags inside the halls of Congress built by enslaved Americans. A mob attacked and called black officers, black veterans, defending the nation those vile of racist names. And yet, an extreme movement of America, the MAGA Republicans, led by a defeated president, is trying to steal history now. They tried to steal an election, now they're trying to steal history, telling us that violent mob was, and I quote, a peaceful protest. That insurrection, those insurrectionists were, these are his words, patriots. That there was, quote, a lot of love that day. They don't have respect for the 81 million people who voted the other way, voted for my candidacy, and voted to end the presidency. In their world, these Americans, including you, don't count. But that's not the real world. That's not democracy. That's not America. In America, we all count. In America, we witness to serve all those who, in fact, participate. And losers are taught to concede when they lose. And he's a loser.
Joining us now, Eugene Robinson, an associate editor and Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for The Washington Post. Also with us, David Blight, professor of American history and African-American studies at Yale University. Professor Blight, we just heard the president echo almost word for word what you said on this program when he said, now we're living in an era of a second lost cause. Once again, there are some in this country trying to turn a loss into a lie which, if allowed to live, will once again bring terrible damage to this country. That second lost cause was something I first heard from you here.
Well, thank you, Lawrence, for having me back. I'm sure that the president and his team came up with that on their own. You don't have to be that wise to realize that this is happening. I found the president's speech today remarkable for many reasons. The setting, of course. And by the way, thank you for playing that clip of President Obama. But I thought the speech was obviously about history and how we use it and misuse it. It was also about truth. I mean, rarely does a president give a speech where he uses the word truth so many times. But thirdly, it was also about mourning. His own mourning, which President Biden often speaks of. But there he was in Emanuel AME. He was speaking of the mourning of that church, the mourning going on in that community, in that congregation. And it made me think that, mourning has always been a deep part of lost causes, wherever they have evolved, because they are mourning great loss. And one difference, which we could discuss, between the Confederate lost cause, with all of its fabricated versions of history, nevertheless, they were actually mourning something quite real. They had lost 300,000 people, buried all across their landscape. They had lost their society. They had a lot to mourn. But the mourning going on in the Trump lost cause seems to me a whole different thing. It's a nostalgia for some kind of time and some kind of place and some kind of ideal that people don't have anymore. It's yearning for a racial order that seems to be gone. It's a mourning of something they too have lost, but it's not nearly as, shall we say, imposing and powerful as what the South had lost in the Civil War. It is nevertheless potent. There is a Trump lost cause. It has almost all the ingredients of traditional lost causes.
Gene Robinson, this was also a campaign speech, the second campaign speech of the year by President Biden. I want to get your reaction to the speech in any way that you want to frame it, but also possibly the campaign.
Well, as David framed the speech, I mean, I do think I was struck by the invocation of a second lost cause. I've spent some time researching my own family history, and through the development of that first lost cause ideology, and all the pain and suffering that caused, it had real world consequences. And the second lost cause, like the first, is having real world consequences, and we're gonna have a reckoning of those in November. It was the second big speech of President Biden's campaign, and it hit, I think, several of his major themes. A primary one being saving American democracy, and that's what he talked about at Valley Forge. That's the direction, in many ways, of his speech at Mother Emanuel.